Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Rod Crandall. I'm the Regional Vice President here at E4, welcoming you to our brew where we build relationships every week. So thank you for tuning in. And for those of you that this may be your first time, we do like to start these brewcasts by celebrating the national days. So today is the National Day of Giving and the Let's Hug Day. So if you know me well, those are actually pretty on point, especially with what we're talking about here today. So I did find that interesting. So today we're kicking off December's lineup of the brew where we're focusing really on legacy planning. And I'm here to discuss with you how we can help define and determine legacies and really do them intentionally and on purpose, right? We do encourage that you use the chat box or raise hands if you do have questions. All attendees are entered into a drawing for a CE voucher as well as a Starbucks gift card, and we're going to announce that winner at the end. So again, with that, I thank you for joining us today. So as we approach the end of the year and holiday time, knowing Thanksgiving was last week, this is always really a time to reflect on what's most important. And when I reflect on what's important, which candidly happens a lot, what I really come down to for me is what's important is health, wealth, and relationships, right? And many of you may know that my mom passed away 7 years ago unexpectedly in a drowning in Lake Michigan. Story for a different day. But when that happened, I really got laser focused on what I'm grateful for, what I want my legacy to be, what kind of business that we're in. And health, wealth, and relationships were what came out of that, where I realized that's really what's important to me. And then I sort of judged myself on how I was doing. And I judged that I was doing pretty well in two of the categories, which was wealth and relationships. But maybe I needed a little bit of help on the health side. Now, I wasn't in terrible health, but since that 7 years ago, I've lost 30 pounds. My cholesterol was a little high. My blood pressure was a little bit high. And candidly, I just wasn't intentionally focusing in those areas. I was intentionally focusing on building my relationships, my friendships, my business relationships, and my wealth. And you know what? What you focus on tends to grow. And so I really realized, hey, I need a little more intention around my health. And so I did so. And as we sit here today, I'm happy to report I just had my annual physical. And when the doctor called me afterwards, she literally said, your labs are perfect. So whatever you're doing, continue to do them. So I thought that was beautiful. And again, what we pay attention to matters. Because at the end of the day, especially relative to a legacy, we're all going to have one, right? We already have one, right? We have a reputation as well. Where's that come from? Well, we already have one. But are we doing that by default, or are we really doing that by design? And so one of the other things that I learned through, this business, but really with my mom's death, was what business am I really in? And the business that I'm in, and what I would suggest the business that all of you are in, is the answer business, right? Our clients are looking to us for answers. They're looking for answers for the good stuff, which is how can I retire and win, and how can I afford for my kids to go to school, etc. But they also need answers for, quote, the bad stuff. What happens if we die prematurely? What if we become disabled in some way? What if we have a long-term care event, right? And so we're in the answer business, and we need to help facilitate these answers. And so lastly, what I learned was that we can't help find the best answers if we don't make sure that we're asking the best questions. And so it's all about discovery. What is important to you, right? I tell my wife that that's really the main important question for us is what do we want for ourselves, right? And really being intentional around that. And everyone's going to be a little bit different. Right? And so today we're going to talk a little bit about intentional legacy or legacy by design. And I have the next two brews as well, which I'm going to give you previews of. But this is all about legacy here as we end the year and as we set ourselves up and our families and our clients up for the best year ever here in 2026. So I did mention I'm Rod Crandall. Functionally, what I do is I sell intentional integration of insurance in a wealth advisor's practice, right? And I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with over 200 wealth advisors the last 20 years. I've been in business 25 years, spent the first 5 years on my own with Northwestern Mutual. I believe my job, and candidly, I believe all of our job, is to really motivate our clients to operate in their own best interest. right? And they don't often know what that is, especially around insurance planning, because we might be hiding from that topic or hiding from an agent. But that's not in our best interest to hide from that, right? And in order to be successful, we've got to often make decisions that maybe don't feel that great, just like working out. That's not the most important. It's not the funnest thing that I do. It's just maybe the most important thing, right? And I'd rather do other things. And then guess what? If you do that for a really long time, you end up with that law of gradually and then suddenly. And it could be gradually and suddenly good, or it could be gradually and suddenly bad. Right? And so at the end of the day, in order to be about answers, we have to start with questions. And really the questions aren't just mathematical. Mathematical questions are very important when we're putting together a financial plan. There's no doubt about it. We need to have these numbers or we don't have a plan. Right? But we need to make sure that we touch the heart before we touch the mind. And so by asking appropriate questions that really get people thinking about what's most important to them, then what we can functionally do is take the heart questions and pair them with the mind questions, and then our products and our solutions end up funding our clients' goals. And it's my experience that a lot of people aren't super intentional in this area, and so you really stick out if you can help facilitate these kind of conversations. And so if we take that sort of setup, if you will, and we apply it to legacy planning, this is how I'm thinking about it. And hopefully this will be helpful for you. And I want to share some really good resources of 3 individuals that I think are in the bullseye area for intentional legacies. Okay. So in the next about half hour together, hopefully we'll have some time, or hopefully you'll be able to pull 1 or 2 things out of this, and it'll be a good use of your time here today. So thank you for being here. So as we describe, everyone's going to leave a legacy. And generally, what does that mean, right? It's about memories, it's about money, and it's about meaning. Now, a lot of people that are talking about legacy are focused on money. And I certainly was for a long time. And I think a lot of us are. And for me, it was that I never had any money, and my parents didn't have any money. And I figured, you know what, the number one thing that I need to do is figure out how to make some money. And I was a busboy, and I made some money, and I was a great busboy, and I was making a lot of money, right? And what I thought that I needed was that I needed to make $100,000 a year, and that all my problems would go away. That's what I thought, right? I was focused on money. Of course, what I found out is that, money is very important. There's no doubt about it. But I found it's not nearly as important as other things, at least not to me, right? But we have memory, money, and meaning. And so what does that mean? If you really think about it, the legacy can kind of be broken down, if you will, into kind of 4 areas. What do we want personally? What about professionally? Now, what about spiritually or energetically or religiously, right? Whatever that might mean to you. And then ultimately mathematical. So I'm going to break these down a little bit and kind of walk through each of them. Excuse me. So on the personal side, it's about love and it's about memory, right? Who do we love and what do we want to be remembered for? What are our most important relationships? I just spent Thanksgiving out in Napa with my best friend. Well, this is a best friend for 35 years. And what I determined about this relationship is that, first of all, there's no such thing as new old relationships. Many of us don't have friends that long, but when you do, you go, oh my gosh, I've been friends with this person, but he's been 4 or 5 or 6 different people, and so have I. And we saw each other as kids and as we were growing, and it's just really special. Having really close relationships is really special. If you're like me, I can handle, what's the word, the talk where you're meeting somebody, it's escaping me, the small talk. I can do small talk as good as anybody. I don't really care to, because that's not meaningful to me, right? I really want to get to the heart of the matter. And in order to get to the heart of the matter, you often have to go down levels. And if you have to go down levels, you may not have time to go down levels. It may not be an appropriate time or place to go down levels. And so when you have great, deep relationships, you can really get to see what's important to you. Plus, what I've found is that it's very hard to see yourself very clearly, or at least myself, and it's a lot easier to see yourself in others. It's that mirror. And by seeing the people around you that are most important, you can see both the good and the bad. And by the way, that's a leadership trait, right? To be able to demonstrate where you are and how you are. Because it helps you answer questions like, what do we really value, right? And see, a lot of people are on the hamster wheel, especially those that I see in my life that have 3 kids, right? You've got like my buddy Don. He's got 3 kids and they're 16, 14, and 12, and they're scheduled out the wazoo. And it's hard to be intentional when you're too busy, right? Now, being busy can be a very good thing and you can be very productive, right? But again, do you end up off somewhere else by default, or are you really paying attention intentionally on what you want for yourself and how you're going to build that? The stories that can be shared, right? That's where the memory comes. That's the love. When I think about my mom, I think about the stories, right? The experiences that we had, right? And so personal legacy is about enhancing those, all right? And then the influence, that's the ongoing ripple. That's the ripple effect. And that's really what I mean about leadership, to the extent that we can be on purpose for ourselves, right? In a lot of ways, that seems selfish, right? I'm going to go to the gym, but I really should be with my kids. Well, you know what? Let's find a way to do both, number one. But going to the gym, for example, is going to demonstrate leadership, right? Because by the way, if I've got good wealth, but I don't have good health, well, I like to walk on the beach. Well, you know what it costs to walk on the beach? Nothing. Now, we have to have enough money to be close to the beach, but it costs nothing to walk on the beach. But if I'm not in good enough health, I can't walk on the beach. Walking on the beach is one of my favorite things to do, right? And so by being full of intention and leadership, we can figure out what's most important to us and take specific actions in order to do so. Well, professional, I think people think a lot more about this, certainly in our area, and I've thought about professional goals for a really long time, even when I was a professional busboy, right? But when we think about being fully abundant as opposed to scarcity, that's where this legacy really comes in. When we have more than enough, right? And especially professionally, you start thinking, what have we contributed? We see this with Shane Van Patten, a good friend of mine. He's on this call. He's an RVP here. Many of you know him. He consistently contributes to us, to me, right? I call him my easy button, right? I need something, I call him my easy button Shane, and he is more than happy to contribute what he knows. And so it's a spillover, right? If we don't have enough for ourselves, we're not going to have enough for other people, right? So how are we leading those around us, right? Are we challenging them? Are we challenging them with love? Right? Because it's not about challenging someone because you're messing up. It's about challenging someone that you told me something was important to you, right? And you told me something was important to you. So what I want to do is I want to help facilitate that, right? I want to help motivate you to operate in your own best interest, right? How did we give back? Well, if we don't have enough for us, we can't give back, right? And so it's a spillover. This is where we join professional organizations and the likes. Right? What institutions or systems did you leave behind? Well, I think about the E4 management team, the ownership team here, right? They're creating this beautiful system of individuals. And what that's doing is it's helping to enable everyone around us. We're all better together, right? And the investment in time and the investment in money, because at some point we're going to retire. At some point we're going to pass away. And what's going to be left behind, right? And so again, these are all important things if they're important to you. And that's kind of the point, is that what is important to us, and let's pull it together, right? Well, what about spiritually, right? I tend to think of energy more than spirituality or religion, but it doesn't matter, right? They're sort of invisible, which makes the spiritual thing interesting. But what is your moral compass? I always talk about the back of a business card, thinking about what values we might share. I care much more about sharing values with an advisor that I work with than I do about working with a successful advisor. Because if they don't share some of my values, like an abundance mindset, like a collaborative spirit, like absolutely operating in the best interest of a client as a fiduciary, whether we technically are or not, I'm not going to enjoy that time. I'm not going to be able to resonate with them too much. So we have to understand, well, what is important to us, right? I think this is why a lot of my friends like to go to church. Right? You get there and you get around people and you get people that are just loving and they want to help people grow, right? That's what I want. I want to grow and I want help growing and I want to help people grow. So anybody who wants to, as my friend Melissa says, just do better, that's her mantra. I want to do better. Hey man, if you walk around and you want to do better, there's a real good chance that you and I are going to get along, right? Because I want to do better, right? And then it's the lessons and the principles and the philosophies. What's interesting to me is that I've realized that sometimes the best way to help people is to really help yourself. And again, that goes into, well, that's weird because that can be selfish, and sometimes it can be. But the more robust we are, the better model we show. I have a friend, Mark, that I encourage him to continue to be a big duck. I think about big ducks and little ducks, right? And I'm not saying little ducks are garbage. Little ducks are just little ducks. But somebody's going to have to be a big duck. I've got a pond in my backyard. You know what happens when you got a big duck and little ducks? The little ducks do exactly what the big duck does, right? Dan Peterson on this call likes to say, never underestimate the power of example. And that's where we need to be robust. If we are not robust, we cannot pour from an empty canister. We have to be overflowing. And then that last one is thankfulness and gratefulness. This one's really important to me. The worst version of me is angry or frustrated or afraid. And I'll tell you, if I'm feeling thankful or I'm feeling grateful, you cannot feel those things and be frustrated or angry or fearful. They're in completely different spots. And so I think this is where a lot of people are meditating, and I do some of that too, where we're trying to be calm, we're trying to breathe, we're trying to remember what we're thankful and grateful for. And in that area of thankfulness or gratefulness, these other things don't exist. Anger doesn't exist there. Fear doesn't exist there, right? And so again, what's important to you is what I want to ask you. What's important to you about spirituality or energy or religion, right? And then what are you doing on purpose with intention to build that out? Then we've got mathematical. That's the one that's easier, right? Well, that's about contribution and compounding. My buddy and I, again, Don, were thinking about the power of compound interest. And you go, wow, I mean, we all know the power of compound interest mathematically, the eighth wonder of the world, right? But there's such a thing as compound interest on our lives and our energy and our thoughts, right? And then that's where that gradually and suddenly comes in. That's what compound interest is. So you go, wow, how did we get from here to there? And by the way, you can compare other people, like maybe in our families, who went from here to there, but now we're way far apart from them. How did we get so far apart from them? We used to share a bedroom with them. Well, it's because of the little things that we do every single day. If I'm going to fly out to California right now and I change my flight course by 1 degree south, I'm not going to make it to LAX. I'm going to end up in Mexico. You're like, how'd that happen? Well, just this little change. And these little changes, what? That's what intention is, right? That's exactly what intention is a little change, right? Compounded by one by one by one, right? You don't lose 30 pounds by losing 30 pounds. You do it little by little by little. You go on a 1 mile walk, right? So we're more vetted on this call effectively or better positioned to ask about math because that's the business that we're in through our financial plans. But again, what can these assets and this money do? We have a saying here at E4 that focusing on what insurance does, not what it is. Right? Money in and of itself does nothing. It's what it facilitates for us. Right? And that's touching the heart. What do you want for yourself, Mr. and Mrs. Klein? And then how can we help your portfolio enable that for you? Right? And that's about enablement. What's important to us and what are we doing that are going to help us get from here to there? Okay. Mathematically, we have to pay attention to liquidity, especially with our best clients. And the next couple of brews, we're going to talk more specifically about what could go wrong inside of a legacy. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking about liquidity and how liquidity can really crush a legacy if we're not paying attention. Okay. This last one, who gets what, when, and how? If it's our desire to create a legacy and be able to make sure that our children have a great moral compass and have enough money to do what they want, we got to be really careful about what they get and when. Right? We don't want our 18-year-olds to inherit $1 million generally. Is that really going to help them? That might hurt them, right? So what we see with some clients is as we have more than enough and we can create significant legacies and maybe we have significant wealth, we need to pay attention to how our kids get that wealth, right? And is it metered in, so to speak, right? And we see that also with like vacation homes whereby it's going to stay in the family, but that vacation home might be very expensive. And so have we set up and make sure enough liquidity is in place so that that can actually stay in place and not have the kids fighting, right? And so that's what we need to be paying attention to here. So at the end of the day, all of this, again, as I've said almost ad nauseum, is we need to do it with intention. And how do you want to be remembered? And what values do you want passed down? What impact do you have? And how do you want your wealth to grow and ultimately be transferred? Right? So there's three people out there that are doing this really, really well, in my opinion. Shane Van Patten turned me on to this guy, James Reed. So he's got a great process or program, I guess, about the Legacy Letter Challenge. And this is really about writing a love letter to your family. So it's one thing to have a will, which you probably need a trust, and that's beside the point. Okay, but it's another to put those words, the love letter, right? What does all of this mean? Why did I put all this together? What's important to me about this family vacation home? What's important to me about how I want you to put together my final wishes effectively? Right? The way James talks about it, it's not a will, it's a gift of heart and values, right? Having the answers that we need, especially at death or disability, is absolutely a gift. It is a gift to our loved ones, right? And I would go so far as saying that if we don't have our affairs in order, that is, I don't know what the words are. It's whatever the opposite of a gift is, which I guess is a burden. We do not want to burden our families, especially in a time of disability or death. We need to have appropriate answers. We need to have appropriate protection in place so that we can just deal with grieving, right? Because grieving is the heart, right? And now we have the mind, which is the mathematics, right? And if we don't have the two of them aligned, we can effectively have a mathematical and emotional catastrophe at the same time. So it is a gift to be buttoned up. And we as advisors, it's our duty to help our clients button their things up. Not only is it the right thing to do in the context of what I'm talking about, but we can actually get paid in a lot of money to do that, right? I've determined over time that really what I want to do is I want to help people and I want to make money. And my focus is just on helping people all the time. And I'm not even kidding. All I do is focus on helping people. Now, I don't do that completely without thought that I'm going to be paid, because I am paid. But I don't require being paid to help you. I just get paid. Right? And if I can help you and I can get paid, then I can help more people, and then I can get paid, and then I can help you again, and then I can get paid. And so the focus is just on how can I help you? And I'm only going to be able to help you to the extent that I've been able to help myself, which is the robustness I'm describing. We need to be very robust so that we have more to give and so we can spill over, right? This last one is legacy beyond money, which is exactly what we're talking about here. Values, relationships, and purpose. So I would encourage you to check out legacyletter.com. Some of you might be on that right now. A lot of good stuff, good videos, good thoughts, right? And by the way, if you're having a hard time talking about insurance with your clients, stop talking about insurance. Stop that. Talk about legacy. What's important to you, right? If you ask people what's important to them, then you can ask them what plans they have in place to facilitate that importantness, if you will. And then you can identify gaps, and then you can make recommendations for investments in insurance products. You can say, hey, would this product help facilitate that for you? They go, well, yeah, but I don't really want to buy this product. And you go, I know. Neither do I. So this is what I call the compared to what game. This is what I tell my wife. What business am I in? I told you I was in the answers business, and that's true. but I'm also in the compared to what game. So people are buying insurance from me every day. Nobody wants to buy insurance from me on any day. How are they buying insurance from me? They're buying it because of the compared to what game. Compared to what? Right? And so we help them determine what's important to them, help them determine what their options are. One distinct option is to accept the risk that you have and put no insurance in force. I don't hide from that option. I let them know directly that is one of your options, right? But how does that feel? And you know how it feels for most people? It feels like this. Ooh, that's not good. No, I need some insurance, but I don't want to pay too much. Now we go, oh, perfect. Because I'm in the business of custom designing insurance solutions for you that make perfect sense for you, your family, and your financial plan, right? And so the question shifts from should I or should I not have insurance to how much insurance should I have and under what structure or under what design, right? And so this is really important. So I'd encourage you to check this guy out. 5 Types of Wealth, one of the best books I've ever written. I wish I wrote it. I read it. I read it. 5 Types of Wealth. This is what this guy's talking about. I said health, wealth, and relationships. This guy calls time wealth, social wealth, mental wealth, physical wealth, and financial wealth. And what he mainly says is that if you don't have some kind of balance in these 5, you're not going to effectively be able to be wealthy. How many people do you know that have an enormous amount of money, but they have no time whatsoever? Right? What about those that have an enormous amount of money, but they have no friends or no social life? What about those that have an enormous amount of money, but deal with mental health issues, right? What does that look like? You know, what about if you have a bunch of money, but you can't walk on the beach? If that's what's important to you, is that wealthy? Can you buy the ability to walk on the beach? Right? And everyone's again focused on the last one, financial. And what I would suggest, and I think what this guy suggests, is that financial is a fuel that can fund the other, right? If I have more money, I might be able to take some more time off. If I have more money, I might be able to create experiences for myself and my friends in a social way. If I have more money, I might be able to get maybe the therapy that I might need, right? If I have a little more money, maybe I can pay for a physical trainer who is going to lead me as a big duck, right? So I'm not pretending that financial isn't important. I'm just suggesting that it's the least important of them all, but is the thing that fuels them all. And I think that's what this guy was getting to as well. So I would suggest you check out his book, The 5 Types of Wealth. And then the last book here is called Die with Zero, Bill Perkins. Now that's an interesting thought, die with zero. He'll even admit that that's not really what he's saying. But some of the core things he says is that people are saving out of fear. I see this in client review meetings. I know the advisors on the call see this. I've seen many advisors almost beg their clients, please go buy that car, please go out on that vacation. Because people are saving because they were told that's what they need to do. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't save. They're saving because their parents didn't have any money or their grandparents didn't have any money, and they don't want to run out of the money, but they end up being fearful, and thus they're not having the experiences that they need. His main goal is not to die rich, but to die with the most meaningful life experiences possible. He calls that creating memory dividends, which I love. Okay. People are afraid to spend money on the vacation because the vacation costs a lot and we should put some money in the retirement account. And I'm suggesting you do both, right? But when you go on that vacation, you create a memory, and that memory you can go draw upon. And so it actually pays for itself over time through memory dividends. I love that. And I love the idea of spending money on experiences more so than things, right? For that same reason. He has a concept called time bucketing, right? He even makes a case that like you ought to backpack in Europe at 18 years old and borrow money to do it. Now that might break the financial planner's brains. It broke my brain because that makes no sense. Like you're going to go put something on a credit card that you don't have the money to do. But he says, yeah, but you will never in your life be able to backpack in Europe. I could backpack in Europe right now. There is no chance I'm going to do that, right? I don't need 5-star accommodations, but I'm not going to backpack in Europe. So that experience for me is never going to happen again. Okay. Correlated to that, he says that the idea that we are borrowing from our future self is crazy because our future self is more capable, it's more connected, it's more able. And so he suggests that we ought to be spending more money than we think. Now, of course, he's coming from, this is an old hedge fund manager, and he's coming from a spot where we have to have more than enough, right? So we have to have more than enough. But when we're more than enough, he talks about skiing, right? Well, you know what? I'm 48 years old. I'm not going to be skiing either. I'm not. Now, maybe some of you will, Brendan might, but generally speaking, you get a little bit older and certain experiences might be off the table, right? He gives an example that for his, I believe it was his 60th birthday, he brought a bunch of people to a private island. Now, again, it must be nice to be able to do that. We don't have to go to a private island to do this. But he started thinking, hey, my parents aren't going to live much longer. And he started thinking, hey, this is costing an enormous amount of money, but we're going to create so many relationships here. We're going to create so many memories, and the dividends are going to keep coming in. And he says that was the best thing he ever did, because anytime that he talks to somebody that he loves that was invited there, they always indicate how amazing that was and how much they think about that. And then it's a facilitation of these great relationships, right? At the very end of the day, we consider his book a blueprint again for living intentionally. And I think a lot of people are told to put money in the bank and never touch the money. And then the money grows, and then what? Well, now we passed away, and maybe we didn't have the experiences that we have. He says, give your money, kids, early. Give your kids money early, right? You've got a few $1,000,000. Don't wait till death to give it. Give it to them now, right? That's when they need it now. They're 35 and they've got 3 kids, right? Give it to them now and either help pay down their mortgage perhaps so they can free up dollars, or maybe create experiences for them. And so I can't recommend these 2 books enough. 2 of my favorite books that I've read, I think ever, but certainly recently. All right, so when we think about how we're going to cascade down on this, I've got 2 more sessions here over the next 2 Wednesdays. So on 12:10, you know, my talk here is titled, Your Client May Be Rich, but Are They Liquid? And so this is where I'm describing that death can be very costly for our best clients. There's a lot of transfer costs, and there's a lot of things to pay attention to. There's estate equalization things when we have highly concentrated assets, maybe in a family business or the family farm. And so a lot of advisors out there ignore insurance planning, for example, for some of their clients that are very wealthy. But I would encourage you to be thinking about, yeah, but they may be wealthy, but how liquid are they? And if you think about what insurance does instead of what it is, it shoves cash into a portfolio or into one's estate at the exact time you need it most. And so how much cash is sitting inside of an estate? And we're going to talk a lot about liquidity there. And then on 12:17, we're going to talk about what other things can derail our client's legacy. It's not just liquidity. What about long-term care costs? That's the big one, right? I call that retirement portfolio protection. What about poor estate structure? That can mean a lot of things, right? Being in the probate court. Why are we letting our clients go to the probate court? That's just silly. Market volatility, you guys know that better than any, but that's something that can derail us. Taxes, right? Not just current taxes, but future taxes. Family dynamics, you know, I don't know how robust your family is or how perfect they operate with each other, but a lot of families, myself included, have some family dynamics that maybe we want to pay attention to. Right? And so these are things that we need to pay attention to. And then not shockingly, there's a lot of insurance solutions that can help us maintain the legacy, maintain liquidity, help with all of these issues. And so at the end of the day, what we want to help you be able to do is be able to identify clients to have better conversations with. And by having better conversations with them, what we're going to do is we're going to help ensure and enable that their goals are going to come to fruition. We're actually going to place a lot more insurance by doing it this way as well. And we're going to also demonstrate fiduciary capacity. So by really asking the right questions and big ducking our clients to where they need to go, our clients get what they need and we get what we need. Boy, that sounds a lot like helping people and making money. And that's what I'm attempting to do. And I'm asking you, what of this resonates? A good friend of mine and mentor, Philip Simonson, always says, take what you like and drop the rest. So hopefully you were able to take a couple things from me. And if so, please take them. The stuff that you didn't like, drop it. But I would say make it your own and figure out what's important to you and share with your clients what's important to you and ask them what's important to them and how you can help enable them. All right, so as I wrap this up, I do want to remind you that today's brew and the entire library is recorded, and it's on our brew page on our website, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel. We do these every Wednesday, or we have done them every Wednesday. And so with that, I'm going to wrap up with our giveaway. I believe we're going to wrap up with our giveaway. And so we have our winner today is Dale Blankenship. Dale, awesome. Dale, I congratulate you. Thank you for being here. You have always supported me. I think you've been in almost every presentation that I've given to Exemplar in the 20 years I've been there, and you always have very good things to share, and I really do appreciate your support, and I've learned some things from you as well. So with that, next week's brew is going to be released at 10 o'clock. And as I indicated, we're going to continue on with legacy and what that means to us and to our clients. And the last thing I would leave you with before I wrap up right now is that if you are not having this conversation with your clients, then who is? And I would say that's not only the legacy conversation we've described, but whatever insurance planning exists. Okay? If you are not asking them who is, and the answer probably is nobody, but the answer could be that it might be a Northwestern Mutual agent having that conversation, and we don't want that either. And so we want to make sure that we operate in the best interest of our clients, and when we help them get what they want, we ultimately get what we want. So with that, we are done here. I appreciate your time and attention. I hope that you guys got something out of this, and I would leave you with this. Let's be good leaders, right? Let's help our clients, and let's drive revenue to our practices. So thank you all very much, and make it a great day. Take care, everyone.